Hello and welcome. This is the Top 5 on Press TV. Thank you for joining us. Now, the Iranian president says the United States' call for talks while simultaneously reimposing sanctions does not make any sense.
The person who is claiming to be willing to negotiate today has withdrawn from all international commitments, from the Paris Agreement to its business commitments with other countries. They left the negotiating table. Call for talks and simultaneously reimposing sanctions does not make any sense.
Hassan Rouhani stressed that Washington must prove its trustworthiness after it scuttled the 2015 nuclear agreement. He said the U.S. demand for direct talks is aimed at waging a psychological war and creating skepticism among the Iranian people to be able to use it in the upcoming congressional elections. He said Washington will regret its decision to reimpose sanctions against Iran. The Iranian president hailed the remaining parties to the nuclear deal, especially the European Union, for their policies in face of U.S. sanctions on Iran. Rouhani, however, stressed that the Islamic Republic still expects practical measures from the EU. Now, for more on that, we are joined live from by Mr. Pai Ian, an independent economic researcher. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. Well, we've heard President Hassan Rouhani making several comments regarding the proposed negotiations from the part of U.S. President Donald Trump. There's, of course, a lot of skepticism towards Trump's stance, of course, because he was the one who left the nuclear deal. What is your take on this situation? How much can we trust Trump when he says that he wants to hold negotiations with Iran? And is it something that he only wants to use for his supporters, actually, and the congressional elections, the upcoming congressional elections?
My views are primarily geo-economic and financial, and as they say, follow the money in order to gauge a sense of what true incentive systems involve. So the West is clearly very concerned about Iran having grown very close to Russia and China with regard to how pricing and trading of oil and other geo-economic imperatives are to proceed. You have Venezuela, you have Turkey, you have other nations basically with Russia and China and Iran collaborating, and it's causing consternation and deep concern between London and Washington, considering high debt levels transatlantically and the real stakes economically. Economic and geopolitical stakes are essentially high for the West. The global East and South are further consolidating their efforts away from U.S. dollar hegemony, basically. So these rash measures from Washington are taken in defensive means, if you really look at it, because they're weighing the gargantuan Western public and private debt numbers and how pricing oil away from dollars directly threatens U.S. and U.K. solvency. So they're trying to scare Iran into coming to the negotiating table in a redux of how things were done vis-a-vis Pyongyang in order to bring Kim Jong-il to the negotiating table, although the stakes are very, very different here.
But what you mentioned exactly the issue with North Korea, and many people are saying that this is going to be something similar to the Trump's policy towards North Korea. First of all, as you said, the stakes are very different here, and second, Iran has made it very clear that that it is not renegotiating its nuclear deal. And the U.S. was the one that left the deal in the first place. How is Iran supposed to trust the U.S. again in order to hold any kind of negotiation whatsoever?
Iran isn't supposed to, and it's really not about nuclear weapons or nuclear development, as Iran held fastidiously to the JCPOA agreement. Again, look at what's being sanctioned: dollar banknotes, gold, precious metals, aluminum, steel, commercial passenger aircraft, and coal. And eventually, Washington wants to bring oil exports to zero by November 4th. These all beg the questions over geostrategy shifting eastward away from the dollar. And this might seem opaque to viewers, but it is a vital issue to London and Washington because it is a direct threat to deeply over-leveraged, over-indebted finance. And hence, it's very different stakes from North Korea, but there is a paucity of viable policy options because Washington has not had relations in nearly 40 years with Iran, and so they're using the same playbook with regard to trying to scare the leadership in Tehran to come forward and ideally step away from its dealings with its Eastern partners. And it's really up to Tehran to call the bluff here, because the momentum is eastward globally, not westward right now, and it's attested to by the rashness of how the West is going about throwing the book at Iran.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pai, an independent economic researcher. Very interesting points raised right there.